Good evening, everyone who's watching. I'm just going to make sure that everything is working out. Oh, thank you. Seeing a few people in the YouTube chat that I'm expecting. All right, so the YouTube seems to be working. First, it's been a minute since we did any streaming with the World Land Bridge show, so just going to make sure I got everything going. And then I'm going to start talking a little bit. All right, so let's see how this is going. Yep, seems like this is working too. So let me just open up one more tab. Get myself, see how things are going. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being on. Um, my name is Daniel Burke, and this is the World Land Bridge Show, hosted by the LaRouche organization. It is January 27, 2023, and tonight's show, we're going to have back the inimitable, uh, n- humble, I'm sorry, is it humble? Modest. He's humble too. But the modest scholar in American system economy, Neil Martin, a good friend of mine, as everyone knows, who's watched this program before. And the subject is William McKinley. Hello, Macduff. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everyone who's watching. Hi, Gribble Report. Good to see you guys on. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk with Neil, and you're going to learn something about William McKinley and who he was and why he was killed, and what is this American system that he championed. And this is completely urgently relevant today because that was also a turning point, a pregnant moment in history, I suppose I could say, where there was a great opportunity to bring about the end of colonialism forever, and it was not fulfilled. Today, the stakes are somewhat higher. Either we are going to end colonialism as a species of activity on this planet, empire, oligarchism, as Lyndon H. LaRouche called it, or it is very likely that the world will end, and that'll be the end of oligarchism, because everything has been escalating in the strategic dynamic. The potential for a new paradigm of cooperation based on mutual benefit is growing. You should be very optimistic, but you also have to be clear headed and recognize that the dangers of nuclear war have never been greater. And so, with that in mind, I want to start, before we get to our discussion with Neil, by taking a look at the Schiller Institute webpage. So, take a look here. Go to the schillerinstitute.com, do it for yourself, and you'll see a series of sliders, and several of them are for recent events, these two. And then there's a very important one with the 10 principles of a new international security and development architecture proposed by Helga Zepp-LaRouche, the founder and chairwoman of the Schiller Institute, International Schiller Institute. But in addition, you will find this, the RSVP page and the invitation to the upcoming Schiller Institute online international conference, The Age of Reason, the Annihilation of Humanity. And this is taking place on Saturday, February 4th, 2023. So just about a week from tomorrow. There will be two panels, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. And you can register here, and I invite you to do so. And let's read the invitation. Yeah, this is probably easier to read. We are in an epochal change, but a very different one than that but a very different one than that about which Chancellor Scholz of Germany has been talking. We are at the end of the era of colonial suppression. The countries of the global south are now demanding their innate right to development. The old order which neither follows rules nor is in order, is trying to prevent a change in the status quo, which protects the rights of billionaires, but neglects the billions of people who suffer from scarcity. I would add that the rules based order, in the words of my friend Liam Murphy, is it doesn't have any rules and it's not based. But it's true, they're trying to prevent the change. And there's now an attempt to establish global NATO through an interconnected network of military treaties, the NATO EU agreement, the AUKUS, Australia, United Kingdom, United States partnership, the UK Japan reciprocal access agreement, which look more and more like a march toward a global showdown with Russia and China, whose rise is seen as an existential threat. In the minds of people like Evan Ellis, the U.S. Army War College's resident expert on Ibero American Chinese relations, there will be an inevitable war with China over Taiwan no later than 2027, and that war will be global. Therefore, Ellis argues, Ibero American countries cannot be allowed to cooperate with China because the many infrastructure projects in the region could be used by China in the projected global conflict as intermediate staging bases for attacks against the US supply of food and critical minerals, or perhaps directly against the US homeland. I recommend you look up this article if you can, this white paper. It is overt. We're going to have war with China and it's going to be global war. It should be clear to any sane person global war will be nuclear, and that will be the end of civilization. So it is completely insane to plan for it. And to deny the countries of the global south access to cooperation with the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, which is for the first time giving hope to the developing sector to overcome poverty and underdevelopment, is outright evil. It is therefore more urgent than ever to find forces for peace in all countries of the world who understand that we need to move into a new paradigm in international relations. We absolutely have to overcome geopolitics, which led to two world wars in the 20th century. We have to realize a new international security and development architecture, which takes into account the security interests of every single country on the planet, a lesson we should have learned from the Peace of Westphalia. And we have to realize that there can be no peace without development. We have to discuss the principles upon which the future order of humanity can be built in order to be able to self govern ourselves. The future world order must guarantee the life and creative potential of every person on the planet, and therefore must eliminate hunger, poverty, and underdevelopment. We need to conceptualize and create institutions that can realize these goals. There are many useful historic reference points for the construction of a new order, such as FDR's original intentions for the Bretton Woods system to massively increase the living standard of the countries of the global south as well as the UN Charter. There are the Global Security Initiative and the Global Development Initiative, proposals of China, GSI and the GDI. We have clearly reached a crossroad in human history where we either self destruct in a global nuclear war or we realize our potential as the only known creative species in the universe so far, and therefore find a solution which overcomes the present conflicts by establishing a higher level of reason. A good example of that method of thinking was presented to the world by Nicholas of Cusa with his Coincidentia Oppositorum, the coincidence of opposites, which proceeds from the understanding that the one has a higher power than the many. That is why the offer of Pope Francis to provide the venue of the Vatican for immediate, unconditional peace negotiation between Russia and Ukraine should be supported. It is high time that we bring the political, economic, and social order on Earth into cohesion with the actual laws of the universe. actual physical laws of the universe, which will also give rise to an unbounded optimism about the creative lawfulness which underlies creation. If we change our thinking in this way, we can shape our future in ways few people have an inkling of today. We will soon use thermonuclear fusion power commercially and solve energy scarcity. We will cooperate to make Africa the promising continent of the future. We will cooperate on international space science and travel. We will increase longevity by discovering cures for many diseases. And we will create a new cultural renaissance to celebrate the creativity of our species. Just to name a few of the many wonderful things we will be able to do. To discuss these different roads which offer themselves at this branching point in history, join us in this upcoming conference. Register here. Oh, I didn't have the I'm sorry, I was just reading it instead of showing it to you. I thought I was showing it to you most of this time, but anyway, there's that. So glad to see a few people are still with us here. Oh, good. We have people from Australia watching on Facebook, people from many different locations. Thank you so much for watching. About 50 people on live with us on Facebook. So let's go into the subject at hand. I'm going to bring on my friend Neil Martin, and we're going to get into William McKinley. And I'd like you to absolutely submit your questions and comments so that we have a chance to discuss them as we go. And maybe I'll be able to do something with them in terms of bringing them up, but at least I'll be able to mention them. So here comes Neil.
Hey,
Hi, Neil. How are
Daniel.
you? Hi. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
Um, we had a, I mean, this actually goes back to probably early December when we had a number of people online who were saying they wanted to learn more about McKinley. But of course, this is kind of a continuation of your lecture series on the World Language Show on the subject of the American system. So, welcome very much. Thank you for organizing this class for us. And please proceed. Let us know your opening remarks.
Yes. So this presentation is going to be on box office William McKinley. I an economic historian slash economist by the name of George B. Curtis literally organized me to find out more about William McKinley. George B. Curtis did his job. I found out more about William McKinley. What I did was the first thing I read two biographies about William McKinley. One was bioprotectionist, Robert P. Porter, who was part of the American Protective Tariff League. He was British American, by the way. The second one was by a baby boomer that knew his industrial history, and he wrote a biography about William McKinley. So these are like two positive um, political works about William McKinley. But I will say Robert P. Porter's book was better because Robert P. Porter discussed how much William McKinley knew about the protective tariff. William D. Kelly, who was the leading Henry Carey disciple in Congress, said this about William McKinley. He knows more about the protective tariff than anyone in Washington, right? And so the the first William McKinley speech that I fell in love with was a speech of his May 18th, 1888 speech in Congress. This was during the Roger Mill tariff. The bill got defeated in the Senate, but it passed in the Congress. But before I go on about William McKinley, I would like to give a tribute to Senior Butch.
Thank you, Neil, for bringing that up. In fact, I'm just going to quickly show people, if I can, Mike Billington's article Okay, yeah, here we go. Okay, people will be able to see. Hmm. I thought this was working, but now I'm not sure. Okay, can you see that? Doesn't seem to be working. Okay, I guess I can't do that. Anyway, if you go to larouchepub.com and you go to EIR's latest edition, then you will see. You can see the website right below. You will see a lovely mm, eulogy for Butch Valdez, um, the Philippine a fighter for the Philippines. Let me put it that way. A great fighter for the Philippines, written by Mike Billington. And so I invite you to go to the website and read about him. But please, I'll start up your presentation, and you can tell us what you'd like to tell us.
All right. So go to slide 2
Hmm.
with the picture of Senior Butch. That's Senior Butch right there. And go to the next slide. All right. So the following quote comes from the Michael Billington article that Daniel just referenced. The next quote. So, as I said, Butch Valdez was a universal thinker, and this is what he said about nuclear power. We know that man is the only creature that has been able to use fire for its benefit, and using fire for its benefit, it was on that the development of man, the whole history of mankind was based. We are Promethean. We refer, of course, very often pedagogically to Prometheus. Prometheus was one who brought the beneficial use of fire to mortals, despite what Zeus was saying, and for this he was punished. Our national hero, Jose Rizal, even sculpted a figure of Prometheus being tied to a rock to be eaten by vultures because he had defied Zeus, because he had taught mortals the beneficial use of fire.
Thank you.
And you can the last slide shows the statue or the sculpture. Yes. So mankind through the centuries has chosen Prometheus, and he has kept on he has kept on sticking with the Prometheus theme about mankind. Is man going to be an agent? Is he going to have a beautiful soul and elevate and develop mankind? Or is he going to play the role of an oligarch and please Zeus? William McKinley knew that the United States of America had to play the role of Prometheus and not
Mm,
not act like an oligarch.
mm,
The Democratic Party in the 19th century represented Zeus. They represented Great Britain. They
mm.
wanted to do everything the British told them to do, and they did it gladly without any questions whatsoever, right? And the one thing you got to know about a protectionist, if a protectionist is not attacking England, he is not a protectionist. He's nowhere near from being part of the American system of political economy. And those people who think protectionists don't have to attack the British Empire, they're jabronis. We don't need them at all, right? So Daniel, if we can go to the first slide of the William McKinley show, I mean William McKinley presentation. So free traders and British bread-fed scholars will have you know that protectionism was not an issue in the United States. They will tell you that the Republican Party in 1894 won an overwhelming majority, gaining 100 congressional seats in the 1894 midterms, not because of protectionism, but because of Russian interference. Yes,
Hmm.
there was I have from a reliable source, Wikipedia, that in 1894 there was massive Russian interference in the elections. This just came out 2 weeks ago. All right. They will not tell you that the most sought after man to campaign for the midterm of 1894 was a protectionist William McKinley, the governor of Ohio. McKinley, the GOAT, greatest of all time of protectionism in Congress and in politics for the post Civil War era, spoke in 16 states, spoke in 300 towns, and spoke 371 times during the campaign of the 1894 midterms.
Hmm.
Politicians can't do that today because they're not original, they're puppets.
Hmm.
The only person that I saw that can do something like this or even more was Lyndon LaRouche.
Yeah.
Okay. Next slide.
Hmm.
Why why was
Taking
box
aim already, Neil.
why was box office McKinley so popular? Why was protectionism so popular after President Grover Cleveland, a lapdog of the Cobden Club, and the British got the Gorman Wilson tariff bill passed? It's the economy, stupid. Free trade, the free trade tariff hurt the economy, and no free trader or free trade historian wants to admit that, not even jabroni Michael Hudson. The 1894 midterm was very promising. The next presidential election, McKinley would run for president and John Bull lost. John Bull means England, if people don't know. England lost with Cleveland being officially finished. Those are good memories. But even if I wasn't alive during those times, they're still good memories for me. Seeing John Bull get his butt kicked, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what we got to know that the economic historians of today are not doing their job. This guy, Michael Hudson, economist, economic
Mm-hmm.
historian, he's not doing his job as an economic historian. He should
Well,
be
what does he
attacking the
say
British.
then?
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so I have his book, Protection Takeoff in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he says he covers from 1814 to 1914. That's that's not true, because if anybody covered the 1880s up until the 1914 in America about protectionism, they would have to have covered William McKinley. You cannot ignore the 1880s, 1890s without William McKinley. Neither can you ignore the actions of the American Protective Tariff League. You can't
I
ignore, huh?
no, go ahead.
You can't ignore the actions of Peter Cooper either, who held two conventions, one in 1881 and 1883, talking about the need for more protectionism in the United States of America, right? Who spoke at the 1881 convention? Who are some of like the big names? William B. Kelly, John Brewer Hart, who was a congressman, right? John Brewer Hart, in a speech he gave concerning, I think it was the 1884 tariff, he said that we're not on the side of Andrew Jackson. We're on the side of Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams. That's what he said, right? He actually
Mm.
knew that there was a difference between Andrew Jackson and Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams. So he spoke at the event. And William McKinley also spoke there, right?
Mm.
So there not only was there a network of protectionists, but they were having their own conventions too. But
Mm.
these economic historians don't cover it. That
Well, let me.
Jabroni Hudson didn't cover that.
I'm glad he's got the official title of jabroni. clear that up. But I want to. I'm going to interpolate a little bit, Neil, and I know this is. I hope I'm not repeating stuff you're going to do later. But this is an article from EIR. You can see from 2015 by Jeffrey Steinberg and Anton Chaikin that talks about McKinley. And I just want to make sure people who are watching really kind of get an idea of what we're talking about when we're talking about free trade. And you can go back and look at our previous shows if you want to see Neil kind of develop in depth what is free trade. But here, down here, is useful. Uh, McKinley in 1882 is a congressman attacking free trade in the Congress. He says, England wants it, demands it, not for our good, but for hers. For she is more anxious to maintain her old position of supremacy than she is to promote the interests and welfare of the people of this republic. And a great party in this country voices her interest. That's the party that Neil was talking about. And permit me to raise wheat and permit us to raise wheat and corn for her. We are satisfied to do the latter, but unwilling to concede to her the monopoly of the former. And then he goes further, and I think this goes much to your point, Neil, about how free trade means slavery, which you have emphasized in the past, and slavery means free trade. Free trade may be suitable to Great Britain and its peculiar social and political structure, but it has no place in this republic where classes are unknown and where caste has long since been banished, where equality is a rule, where labor is dignified and honorable, where education and improvement are the individual striving of every citizen, no matter what may be the accident of his birth or the poverty of his early surroundings. Here, the mechanic of today is the manufacturer of a few years hence. Under such conditions, free trade can have no abiding place here.
That was excellent. That was
Isn't
excellent.
that great?
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was.
and I think it's also clear like McKinley is talking about the real America as against the one that was prevented from abolishing slavery as had been intended at the beginning in the Constitution. He's talking about what really it is, which is most obvious in this individual striving and the development, the mechanic who becomes the manufacturer. So I just wanted to interpolate that, um, give people a little bit of background.
Okay. So as I was saying, McKinley was a very popular candidate. He would have been asked to speak. He was asked to speak more, but he couldn't. He had a way beyond full card, right?
371 times. That means he spoke on average once a day, more than once a day.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing,
All
or is
right.
that of the course? Maybe
So
that's over the course of the elections. Maybe that's in 2 years,
no,
which is still incredible.
I think it was just that midterm because
Yeah, that's incredible.
yeah.
Okay,
All right.
next
And
then.
so here's a campaign song, right? Now that I have situated McKinley, we will take a look at what Ohio thought of him when he ran for governor. McKinley already had a star-spangled career in Congress. Here is an extract from a William McKinley 1892 campaign song for governor of Ohio. I got this in Robert Percival Porter's biography about McKinley, by the way.
Oh, cool.
There is mourning in Old England in their free trade Cobden Club. They can't compete with Uncle
Wow.
Sam. Protection, that's the rub. Old Johnny Bull is hustling, but we hold the winning hand. Uncle Sam is doing business at that same old stand.
Wow.
So we see that the population knew about the Cobden Club,
Yeah.
and they knew about Johnny Bull. If you ask an American, or if you ask a jabroni fan of Michael Hudson, do they know who Johnny Bull is? And do they know what the Carbon Club is? No. They
Yeah,
said
Cobden Club, I
I
think, is the issue. Yeah.
yeah, right. They might know Johnny Bull, but they don't know the Carbon Club because they don't
Yeah.
know economic history, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Today's the United States population, they have been deprived of great economic historians. And what do I mean by great economic historians? I don't mean the crap that you see on Wikipedia about protectionists, right? The second leading protectionist in the 1880s and 1890s, Thomas Brackett Reed. You go on his Wikipedia site. He was Speaker of the House. If a
Mm.
Speaker of a House gives a speech on protectionism and you don't want to call him a protectionist, a Speaker of the House, a very
Mm.
powerful congressman, he gives at least 2 or 3 or possibly even more speeches about the protective tariff. And these economic historians don't want to call him a protectionist. This is not Wikipedia's problem. This is an indictment on historians and economic historians in the United States of America today,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, so now go on to the next slide. Okay, so the the next the following slides are going to be about the William Morrison tariff in 1884, which failed. William Morrison is a Democrat, jabroni,
Hmm.
server of Great Britain. He's probably a concubine of Great Britain. I should say that. Then we have Roger Q. Mills, another concubine of the British, right? So Roger Mills, the only reason why Roger Mills is in history was because McKinley gave the greatest speech ever in the post-Civil War era on May 18th, 1888. And William McKinley told us what is protectionism, what Europe wants to do to the United States. How do you organize an economy, and how box office domestic commerce is, right? So I'm going to read an extract from his famous May 18th speech.
Now, before we do that, can we let me just try to give a quick definition of domestic commerce, and then you can correct me, okay, or improve it. So, domestic commerce as opposed to trade, foreign trade. Domestic commerce meaning, like it's sort of like you hear the weak, sad echo of it when people say made in America. Because what we really mean is when you have a national economy that is based on providing for the continuation of the anti entropic growth of your national economy, meaning that there's a commitment to increase science, technology, manufacturing, infrastructure, and therefore the the economy is propelling itself forward. The commerce that is happening between the states or within the states. It's happening from the steel manufacturer in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, who gets the steel to people in Boston, and it happens between the people who make the who refine the petroleum products and then get them to people across the country who need them, and many other cases like that. Would that be accurate?
That's an accurate description of domestic commerce, but one thing that you left out is
Yeah.
that domestic commerce is also national consumption of
Right.
national resources, right?
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
produces a job multiplying effect, a diversity of employments, right? Now you have some jabronis who will tell you buying and selling stocks on Wall Street and contributing to a lady's only
Right.
my fans account is domestic commerce. That's not domestic commerce.
Yeah.
That's what you call the British system. I'm
You would
sorry.
say that paying money to OnlyFans is not domestic
No,
commerce.
that's not domestic commerce.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
neither is paying, your heroin dealer or anything
Yes.
or something
Correct.
like that.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So it's productive. It's physical. It's the physical economy.
But you know what?
And
Something funny.
what?
Lynn said when he's talking about the newplex, he says um burn, use or burn down the horror signs.
Melt down the neon signs at the whorehouses if we
Yeah,
need
yeah,
to
yeah.
make these nuclear power plants everywhere. Absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
so that's domestic commerce. Go ahead,
all
please.
right. This measure is not called for by the people. It is not an American measure. It is inspired by importers and foreign producers, most of them aliens, who want to diminish our trade and increase their own, who want to decrease our prosperity and augment theirs, and who have no interest in this country except what they can make out of it. To this, it is added the influence of the professors in some of our institutions of learning who teach the science contained in books and not that of practical business. I would rather have my political economy founded upon everyday experience of the puddler. That's someone who changes pig iron to wrought iron, or the potter, then the learning of the professor, or the farmer and factory hand, then the college faculty. Then there is another class who want protective tariffs overthrown. They are the men of independent wealth with settled and steady incomes who want everything cheap but currency. The value of everything clipped, both coin, cheap labor, but dear money. These are the elements which are arrayed against us, right? I'm going to talk I'm
Fantastic.
going to talk about two of the elements, right?
Yeah.
The foreign the foreign people such as the Manchester the Manchester industries or the industries throughout Great Britain, right? Now, William McKinley is saying they're aliens, they don't augment our domestic commerce, and they have interests opposed to ours, right? The whole thing with free trade doesn't have interest for the advantage of the other.
Mhm.
Free
Mm.
trade only has one thing in mind: permanent interest. And I'm going to get into this later on.
Fleecing the other side.
Yeah, so we have that, right? But
Yeah.
he's talking about professors. Why would he
I
talk
love it.
about professors? Well,
Yeah.
I have a quote from another jabroni. He was one of the leading jabronis in the 1880s and 1890s. His
Mhm.
name was William Sumner. I bet Wikipedia calls him a free trader. Probably
Mhm.
does, right? Okay. So this guy, William Sumner, what is there to know about William Sumner? William Sumner said repeatedly that manufacturing industries are parasites to the American economy. I'm sorry, were steel mills and cotton mills parasites to the British economy?
Mm.
No British free trader ever said that, oh, our steel mills and cotton mills and manufacturing are parasites to our nation. Daniel, what's a parasite?
A bloodsucker.
A bloodsucker, right? It doesn't elevate or nourish
Mhm.
its partner, right?
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
so we take a look at the steel industry in the United States of America. It became the number one steel industry sometime in the late 19th century.
Mhm.
Where are the victims of the steel industry? I don't see socialists. Not even socialists say that the steel industries were parasites. Well, no, well, you can't. Well, they might say they cause pollution, but that's the synthetic left, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's it's a big thorn, Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna read this quote. Another
Is that
jabroni.
next? Are we on the
Yeah,
next
yeah,
page? Are
the
you
next
doing
one. Yeah. This is William Sumner. We have here now 50 millions of people over a continent with great varieties of climate and soil, and we constitute the most energetic, restless, and indefatigable nation which has ever existed. To try to explain to try to plan a system of artificial relations of industry for such a nation is the most ridiculous undertaking that could be proposed. What is William Sumner saying? William Sumner is saying
Laissez faire.
manufacturers in the United States of America are not natural.
Mm.
You know, there's this guy by the name of Alexander Hamilton. I heard his subject of the report on manufacturing was a great read. It looks like this jabroni, Professor William Sumner, doesn't agree with Alexander Hamilton,
Yes.
right? So this is what we have in the United States of America in the late 19th century. That's the free trade faction.
Is he north or south?
I think he's north.
He's north,
Let me look him up, William Sumner. Let me look him up
but
real quick.
he's just in denial of reality. I mean, the way that this kind of circular logic is, right? That they sort of say, well, because the South hasn't developed, therefore that is proof of the fact that trying to plan the economic development of the South is is an impossibility, right? They sort of use the results, which are the results of free trade, and claim that the results are the reason that we can't possibly do anything different
Oh God,
because this is the
this guy
natural
was born
state.
in Patterson, New Jersey.
Oh my God!
Man, that's not poetic
What a
justice. That's
No
satanic justice.
kidding. Going completely against his
Oh my.
everything. For people who haven't been to Patterson, there is the second largest natural falls in the United States, I think, and it has been used. It was used after the ideas of Hamilton were already set into motion, specifically around the development of Patterson. It was used some decades later to develop advanced water chases, where basically they would take the water and push it into small canals that would get the speed of the water going quickly, and then those would move the machinery. The water passing underneath would power machinery of factories that were placed above the water chases, and I strongly recommend going to visit that. I'm about a half hour from Patterson, right here, not even 25 minutes. Um, so Sumner is against the actual development of his own birthplace.
Yeah. Sometimes you get cases like that. We go on to the next
Yeah,
slide.
you do. Yeah, go ahead.
Next slide.
Yep.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. Yeah,
Passover.
yeah. No, no. This is good. This is good. This is good. Okay. So now, okay. So what I've done, right? I link slide one with slide two because in order to discuss how insane these professors are in the United States, I brought up William Sumner, right? Now,
Mm,
William Sumner claims that the United States doesn't need industries. All it needs is agriculture. That is quite insane. And so here's what William McKinley says: what the agriculturalist of this country wants more than anything else, after he has gathered his crop, are consumers. Consumers at home, men who do not produce what they eat. Very important.
mm,
But must purchase all they consume. Men who are engaged in manufacturing, in
mm.
mining, in cotton, spinning, in potteries, and in the thousands of productive industries which command all their time and energy, and whose employments do not admit of their producing their own food, right? That's
This is the
William
whole.
McKinley answering the farmer's question.
Mm.
William McKinley is putting himself into a great field, right? And so the
Well, this
farmer,
is
yeah. You want to say something, Daniel?
Well, I just want to bring up that this idea of the farmer's question. I mean, first of all, this is a great theme of Hamilton, specifically the relationship between agriculture and manufacturing, which is now presented here really polemically. But also, I mean, this is what is meant by the harmony of interests. Uh, that's my understanding, as from Henry C. Carey,
That's correct.
as a, right as against the sensibility of our perhaps an orthodox Marxist, or I don't know, whatever brand of Marxist you want to say, who says that uh, we have to differentiate among which of these people are of a, what their class is, as opposed to the quality of physical economic activity that they're engaged in, and how that activity defines the, interrelationship within society. So just an observation. Please continue.
All right. I'm gonna cut down on the presentation.
It's
All
fine. We
right.
got we got time. I don't think.
The
I mean, people can
the
don't mind a
all
nice
right.
long
The
talk.
next the next slide, Daniel.
Yeah.
All right. The American agriculturalist further wants these consumers near and convenient to his field of supply, cheap as inland transportation is. Every mile saved is money made.
Mm-hmm.
Manufacturing establishment in the United States, wherever situated, is of priceless value to the farmers of the country. All right. What William McKinley said was astronomical. He is putting himself in the field with Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, Matthew Carey, Frederick List, Henry Clay, and Henry Carey. They all uttered the same thing about how it's good to have manufacturers near to agriculture. Right? So that's pretty self-evident, right? But these Democrats, they keep on coming up with sophisms of free trade. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Then we have the British. This is the British section, right? That we're going to cover, right?
You know what? I just want to make sure we actually explain this further. Now I'm recalling the farmers' question in this issue is the question as to whether the farmers don't profit more from free trade than from protectionism,
Correct. Yes.
right? So, and the free traders basically say, well, the farmer wants to be able to sell his, his produce at the in the most mm, liberal possible way, right, in the easiest possible circumstance, and that means seeking overseas purchasers, right? And therefore, we should make it easy for him to sell it overseas. Is that the basic idea?
That's that's the basic idea that free trade will give the farmers a better market and better prices. And
Right.
the funny thing about this, right? 9/10 of what the United States of America was producing in the late 19th century, the 1880s and 1890s,
Mm,
9/10 of that was consumed in America. Why do they need
right.
another market?
Right. That's
What?
a fascinating remark. 9/10 of what was produced in the United States of America was consumed in the United States of America.
And a number of protectionists mentioned this, right? There was
Wow.
this one guy, George B. Loring, who said the manufactured goods that we produce, $15 million worth of them, 14 million was for the home market.
Wow.
Our home market has was used to be box office, right? Now,
Yeah.
I told you a quote about Thomas Brackett Reed, who Wikipedia doesn't see as a protectionist. He says that we had 70 million people. We were doing the consuming of 700 million people.
Hmm.
Talk about a field of domestic commerce. And if you have a wide field of domestic commerce, you have diversity of employments, right? That's what the farmer
Hmm.
wants. The farmer wants to see a diversity of employments. He doesn't want to see farmers by at his side all around, right? We don't want a manufacture. We don't want an agricultural society. We want an agro-industrial economy that eventually becomes the newest sphere. All right.
I'm sorry. I'm going to keep interrupting you. I'm just enjoying this very much. I want to show something. Let's see. Mm, hmm. Let's see. Is that going to work? It's not quite going to work. I wonder how I can do this. I'm going to try. I'm going to just try to share one thing.
Okay.
If I can do it, great. If I can't, I can't. Okay, check this out. Good. You can see it. Okay. This is the McKinley poster, I think from
The president,
1897.
yeah, running for president.
prosperity at home, prestige abroad, commerce, civilization. I thought that was so striking. I mean, you're constantly talking about domestic commerce, Neil, and I'm like, and then I realized, oh, look at that. This is actually like this is the key thing that he's campaigning on, and this thing you have from the campaign song "Attacking the Cobden Clubs" is amazing. And then clearly, this is the harmony of interests. These are all different sectors of the economy, all cooperating around sound money. Fascinating. Really, really optimistic, super optimistic poster. So just wanted to show that.
Okay. All right, we go on to the next slide.
Okay.
We're taking a look at Europe. All Europe is watching the progress of this bill. Its immediate promoters are not following it with keener vigilance and more absorbent interest than the foreign sympathizers. All traders, all manufacturers across the Atlantic are watching it with the deepest concern and anticipating the rich harvest which awaits them when our gates shall be opened. Our industrial defense torn down and free and unrestrained access to our splendid markets is afforded for the products of their cheap labor, right? So
Mm-hmm.
on the other side of the Atlantic is Zeus, right?
Amen.
They're
Yeah.
paying close attention to whether or not to see whether or not if the Mills tariff bill is going to pass, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want the United States home market, right?
Yeah.
William McKinley goes on, right? The hope of foreign producers, especially the British, also Europe, but especially the British, is in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party in the 19th century was the first political party to say that protective tariffs were unconstitutional. The
Hmm.
South did this, and then Grover Cleveland's campaign brought that back alive again. But they want to destroy the domestic commerce of the United States of America, right? And so the hope of foreign producers is in the Democratic Party. Foreign producers are already preparing for the new order of things. They are already establishing agencies in the United States, preparing to invade and occupy this market. I focus on preparing to invade and occupy this market, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you go to the previous
Yeah. Sorry.
yeah. All right.
You keep going for a minute. I'll be
Okay.
right back, Neil.
All right. So William McKinley is saying they want to invade and occupy our markets, right? All right. So free trade is war. It's an invasion to destroy domestic commerce or to make sure domestic commerce never happens or to make sure that domestic commerce never grows. Now, the Democratic Party. Okay, so William Sumner, part of the Democratic Party. Arthur Perry, these are both political economists. They're part of the Democratic Party, and they don't have any sound ideas about the United States of America. They will never tell you that the British want to invade and occupy our market. They say no, the British want to liberate the farmers and the consumers. The British don't want to liberate the farmers and the consumers. They want to destroy the United States of America. That's why William McKinley said invade and occupy this market. Those are military terms, but you have to see commercial commercial trade with other nations as war when you're dealing with a power such as the British, because the British never develop a country with their commercial assaults on the country. Look at Ireland in the 1880s. Look at India. India was ravaged with famines in the 19th century, right? We have Turkey. Turkey was destroyed with the free trade tariff. We have Portugal. Portugal was destroyed with the Muthian Treaty in 1703. It never recovered to its full potential. And the United States has had her economy invaded and occupied by the British numerous of times. And these historians don't want to say it. They don't want to say the object of free trade is to invade the domestic market and keep the domestic market to themselves and expand their foreign trade. They don't want to protect domestic commerce. They're no good. All right, next slide. Now, this is from McKinley's April 30th, 1884 speech. And he's talking about the British. Now, this is a concrete attack on the British. England is more concerned today for the passage of this bill than any citizen or class of citizens of the United States, unless it be the importers. She is working with the deepest concern for the progress of this bill, and she does not refrain from saying that if it becomes a law, it will put money into the pockets of her manufacturers. She does not hesitate to declare that from selfish motives, she wants the full success of the Democratic Party in this measure. Here is what her trade papers say. So we have American jabroni economists talking about the need for free trade. We have the British letting it all hang out, saying that we want America's markets. Let's see what the British papers are saying about free trade. And this is from the machinery market, right? This year is likely to see important political changes on the other side of the Atlantic, which will have their influence on business here. Events more rapidly in America and coming triumph of the Democratic Party. There means the triumph of free trade movement in the states. It is not to be supposed that there will be free imports into the states, but a tariff for revenue only, which is the leading cry of the
Mm.
Democrats, will open an immense additional field for the sale of our English manufactured goods in the states. So the Democratic Party had a sexify free trade and say, yeah, we don't want free trade. We want tariff for revenue only. And what is a tariff for revenue only? Lower
Mm.
tariffs are tariffs on goods such as coffee, tea, and luxurious items that we don't make, right? It will allow for competing goods to invade our country. And we know what free trade is all about. Invade the foreign country with your manufactured goods and
Mm.
occupy them forever and never make them grow.
Yeah, that really also just puts in the context the strategic situation today because, you know, they're not going to get that done with China. It's not happening. The opportunity is long lost. There were people in Wall Street and the city of London who thought for sure they could get China to, let them get their grubby hands all over everything. But there has been no let up of the effort of the Chinese to control their domestic commerce and to control their physical economy and advance it for the benefit of the general welfare. And so there's just, the scales have tipped, I think, increasingly because of the inability of the oligarchy today to do the type of thing that they did following the assassination of McKinley. Not to give the story away, but
Okay.
anyway, please continue.
All right. So now we go on with a very powerful quote that William McKinley is going to say. What he's going to say. Um, they want this market. It is the best in the world, and he is not lying. They cannot get it wholly while our tariff remains as at present. They cannot get it so long as our manufacturers can be maintained.
Ooh,
They must be destroyed. Their fires must be put out. And this Congress is today engaged in an effort to help England. He's
Wow.
talking about the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party is colluding with the British to destroy domestic commerce in the United States of America. And no economic historian sounded the whistle on this. None of them has done it. Not even that jabroni Michael Hudson. He's never said anything like that. Michael Hudson has probably heard of George B. Curtis. Michael Hudson knows a whole lot of protectionists, but he doesn't have the passion to fight for truth,
Hmm.
right? His famous word is, I don't deal with Lyndon LaRouche. Only a jabroni would say that, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so McKinley just said we have the best market. It's the best market in the world, and the British wants that. How come the British never say that? We want to come in, destroy your domestic commerce, and have your markets. They never said that to England. They never said that to Turkey. They sure as hell never said that to the United States of America. You have to do massive intelligence to actually see them saying
Yes.
something
Right.
like this, right?
Right. 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 Right.
What
That's a
what
very
they
good
say
point.
is that we want to give you opportunities to have cheaper goods and more freedom.
Mm-hmm. More freedom. Absolutely. And you point out in your earlier presentations the economic intelligence, I believe, of Henry C. Carey in picking up on one of the few speeches in the British Parliament where they actually admit this,
Yes.
and he was able to demonstrate that they said it in their own words, but rarely, right, and not because instead they're trying to cajole and hoax people into it.
Okay. All right. I think I'm going to do three more quotes and that's it. Okay. Well, just because
Okay, you
we
can
might
take your
have
time.
conversation. Yeah.
We're not in a rush.
Okay. So the next part is William McKinley making the case for protectionism. Right.
Hmm.
He's going to organize us on why we should have protectionism, right? I am going
Hmm.
to talk about national sovereignty. I will talk about how New England is a boondoggle for domestic commerce. I will talk about who had a better culture, the North or the backward South. And the last thing I will talk about is how big was domestic commerce in the United States of America compared to Europe and Russia. Okay. So Daniel, we're okay. All right. We deny to those foreign nations free trade with us upon equal terms with our own producers. The foreign producer has no right or claim to equality with our own. He is not amenable to our laws. There are resting upon him none of the obligations of citizenship. He pays no taxes. He performs no civil duties. He is subject to no demands for military service. He is exempt from the state, county, and municipal obligations. He contributes nothing to the support, the progress, and glory of the nation. Why should he enjoy why should he enjoy unrestrained equal privileges and profits in our markets with our producers, our labor, and our taxpayers? Let the gentleman who follows me answer. We put a burden upon his productions. We discriminate against his merchandise because he is an alien to our interests. And we do it to protect our own, defend our own, preserve our own, who are always with us in adversity and prosperity, in sympathy and purpose, and if necessary, sacrifice. That is the principle which governs us. I submit it as a patriotic and righteous one. In our own country, each citizen competes with other free and unresentful rivalry, while the rest of the world all are united and together in resisting outside competition as we would foreign interference. William McKinley is calling British free trade foreign interference. I don't want to hear anybody who is a free trader or whatever they want to call themselves. If they don't give this argument, if they don't call free trade foreign interference, I don't trust them. What has to be done is we can no longer trust free traders when they talk about free trade. because they don't they're hiding what free trade is because they're post John Carnes free traders. They don't know
Mm-mm-hmm.
economic history, and they sure as hell don't know economic intelligence.
They have successfully brainwashed themselves
Yes,
to believe the lies of the post Cairns
yeah,
free traders.
and what we see is that that these arguments they don't come up from these post Carnes free traders. William McKinley is saying they don't perform civil duties, they don't pay taxes, they're not in the military, they're not citizens. They should not have any type of equal rights with our citizens, right? Essentially, we are not given extraterritorial rights to the British. That's what he's saying. Because
Yeah,
what
and
is
I
free
mean
trade? Free trade is nothing, is just the same as extraterritorial rights.
that's a fascinating way of putting it, actually. Um, I don't know. There's a lot that comes to mind here. I mean, this is a strong argument for preventing the existence of transnational corporations at all. If people begin to try to think about what this means today, um, that circumstance might never have occurred if this approach had been taken or stuck to, rather. Also, um, well, anyway, let's continue. You go on, please.
Okay.
Some other thoughts came
Um,
to mind, but let's continue.
Another thing that I want to add in, right, is that free trade doesn't add to private credit in countries.
Right,
Private it
right.
does it doesn't help out the community banks, and it doesn't help out the commercial banks, right? When we had strong domestic commerce, what were congressmen giving speeches about and bragging about? They were bragging about the savings and loans banks in their state. These savings and loans banks would have never grew if we had free trade, unbridled free trade. We would be a mess. We'll probably be different states or different countries. But I'll go on to the next page. Next quote. Oh, this is a goodie.
Hold on a second. Okay, let's do this, and then I want to bring up some of the questions and comments that came in the chat.
Okay.
So go right ahead.
Go to the patent office and examine the evidence furnished from the great register of the products of American genius. Take the states which have stood by the protective system, which have built up under it, and contrast them with the states whose representatives have stood in unyielding opposition to the system on this floor. See what result you get. Take Connecticut, a little state, but a manufacturing one. In the year 1887, there were 788 patents granted to the inhabitants of that state, one for every 790 of its inhabitants. While for Arkansas, the number of patents granted were 66,
Hmm.
one to every 12,346. Take Massachusetts in 1887. There were 1,875 patents granted to the people of that state, one to every 950 of her population. While Kentucky were 245 patents, or one to every 6,729 of her population. Take Illinois. 1,595 patents were granted to her people, or one to every 1,929 of her population. While for Georgia, there was 130, or one in every 11,862 of her population. The South is morally bankrupt, spiritually bankrupt, culturally bankrupt, and American system bankrupt. They need the American system.
Mm.
Now remember,
Mm.
now remember, in one of my previous classes, John Lord Hayes was saying that the South needs a machine tool sector. Now you know why the South needs a machine tool sector. All right. Oh, go on to the next slide. It's
Mm-hmm.
the it's the chart.
Yeah, there it is. Very striking. Very, very useful, especially as I pointed out to you when we talked earlier today. When you take a look at the number of patents that are going around in China, I think I can share this now. I think I'm going to be able to share this. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, there it is. Chinese patents surpassed 3 million in 2022 as Beijing pursues innovation strategy. Okay, so first of all, that's insane. 4 million patents in 2022. Incredible. And 3.28 were held by inventors from mainland China. Well, that's interesting too in terms of non-mainland. The number of high-value patents increased by 24% per year, year on year, to 1.32 million, or 9.4 patents per 10,000 people, up from 1.9 per 10,000 in 2021. To qualify, etc. I just think this is fascinating to consider in terms of what's going on here. This commitment to high quality development through technology and innovation. And the growth is tremendous. And then here's just this. In 2021, China filed 1.59 million patent applications, more than double the number filed by the United States. Amazing. And India is actually definitely heavily involved too. So you're making the argument that this is an expression of cultural, economic, spiritual health, and I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
I'm with you. So let me take a moment, Neil. I don't mean to keep breaking up your great presentation, but I have some material, some comments here. Joseph Tidrick says, "What an excellent talk! Time to read a McKinley biography." Um, Incisive says, "UK has no industry left either. What are the British selling in the American market? Cadbury chocolate? I honestly don't know." And our friend SOS USA says, "Well, perhaps they're selling access to offshore tax havens." Um, we have a couple of things that I'm not sure that we'll see if you know about this. Our friend Ryan asks, thoughts on Simon Patten, Patten. Are you familiar with him at all?
Um, I'm familiar with Simon Patton. He's not a tough enough protectionist for me. I read his stuff. Um, it's not on the level of John Lord Hayes, or Giles B. Stebbins, or Van Buren Denslow, or George Gunton, or of course the great Henry Carey, right? I actually have two of his books, right? Well, I have quite a few of his books, but it's I'll stick with the American system, people.
Hmm. Okay. All right, then we have a couple of people happy to hear what you have to say. Incisive says, protectionism is great, but there is no industry to protect. The US already voluntarily deindustrialized since the 1980s. You need to root out financial capitalism and crony capitalism first. And I
Mm,
think that there's some truth in that.
yeah. The
Yeah,
thing
go
is,
on.
right. Okay, so Trump had put tariffs on steel, but if you're going to put tariffs on steel, first of all, you need a market, and you need to be sure that there's going to be a market. There was no market because there was no infrastructure development in the United States of America, like building high speed rail and building the WAPA. If those were being built, those steel tariffs will work, but they're not going to
Yeah.
work, right? So the thing about tariffs, right? You can't separate them from sane banking, right? Glass
Hmm.
Steagall, right?
Yeah,
If
right.
if we had a better banking policy, you will see the need for protectionism, but we don't have a sane banking policy. There's a reason why our banking policy went to hell and our industries went to hell.
Hmm.
The people who that orchestrated the destruction of the American banking sector also orchestrated the destruction of industry in the United States of America, and also
Yeah,
foreign policy. The foreign policy went to hell, banking sector, industry went to hell, cultural
and
optimism too.
that's true. And the principles of national banking, as far as my understanding, is they really haven't been implemented since the New Deal. So we haven't had state-directed credit for infrastructure on the level that's needed, except for perhaps the Apollo program, since the New Deal. So you've got this whole there's it's one process of which protectionism is a crucial aspect as such, but it's I mean, I do think that we need to discuss a little bit further what it means in today's world, so to speak. But I think we'd agree with you, incisive, that I mean our proposal is the four laws of Lyndon LaRouche, which he always emphasized that basically these are crucial principles to move the physical economy forward, but
Yeah.
you need all of them. And he doesn't include tariffs in there. That's not the orientation. But the issue is really the purpose of the tariff and the method of the protectionist tariffs,
Yeah, the
which
mindset.
is
The
and the
mindset,
mindset,
right?
and that's Neil's criticism. He keeps on highlighting of people who are too soft to really be called protectionists, because McKinley says we have to destroy them. And that's right. You hear Lynn was constantly saying, you have to crush the British Empire. You have to crush Wall Street. If you think you're going to get through anything otherwise, if you don't realize you're in war with this entity, then you're missing it completely. And that's the requirement of Glass-Steagall. So we are looking at things from a particular, in a particular historical period that doesn't necessarily match precisely what policies we need today, but it's the intention and it's the method that's needed. Would you agree with that, Neil?
Yes.
Yeah, and then the principles are there anyway. We also have, he continues, he says, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm gonna continue. Um, so why don't we move on, Neil?
Okay.
Very
W-
useful.
We're gonna
Thank
go.
you.
We're gonna go to New England, right? Okay. So Henry Carey is going to be talking. I mean, my fault. William McKinley is going to be talking about how important New England is for the South, the Midwest, and the West of the United States. And in this debate, William McKinley is again talking about the farmers' question. The farmers' question comes up again. Is not New England, I appeal to the gentlemen of the other side. I appeal to the farmers of the country, worth preserving? Is not the industrial system which makes such a community of consumers for agricultural products possible worth maintaining? Does not she furnish you a market worth fostering? Does not she give you a trade and an exchange of products worth your while to guard with the most considerate care? And does not her condition indicate the wisdom of the policy we advocate? Is not her market better for you than a foreign one? Is not New England a better customer for you, more reliable, more easily reached, more stable than old England? Is not Boston a better consumer for the people of the United States than London, New York than Liverpool, Pittsburgh than Manchester, Cincinnati than Birmingham? All right. So William McKinley is making a point to say that New England is box office concerning domestic commerce. If there was, who would the South, the Midwest, and West depend upon if there was no New England? We got to
Hmm.
understand New England was the center of manufacturing for
Yeah.
for decades in the United States of America.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what did they import? Raw materials and foodstuffs. What did they export? Manufactured goods, machinery of that nature, right? And then we go on to the next quote, and then William McKinley is saying, okay, now I'm gonna turn all this to dollars, so you can probably try to understand a little bit better. because you're a little bit hard headed, right? So he said, New England buys of you for all her wants, and they really do. Old England takes not a pound or a bushel from you except what she must have and not and cannot get elsewhere. Let us contrast this home market of New England with the foreign market of Old England. In 1880, New England consumed 540 million pounds of cotton at 11.61 cents a pound, which a value then amounted to $64 million, 694,000, or 20% more than the per capita value of all our domestic exports to the United Kingdom. And this was only New England's contribution to the South producers of cotton. She sends at least $70 million to the West and Northwest for her food supplies. She sends to the wool growers of the Middle Western and Pacific states $40 million annually for their fleeces. I repeat, it it is not this market is not
Is
this
not
market
this?
worth is not this market preserving, a cherishing, and does it not make us long to have New England thrift, New England enterprise, and
Mm,
New England
mm.
politics more generally distributed throughout all sections of the country? All right. So William McKinley is talking about the domestic commerce that New England stimulates. Now here we have this jabroni William Sumner saying, "Oh, your manufacturers are a parasite." Okay, let's see. The manufacturing region of the United States spends $70 million on foodstuffs, spends $40 million on wool, spends over $62 million on
On
cotton.
cotton.
How is that blood sucking? It's not blood sucking. It's domestic commerce. It's the advantage of the other. See, in foreign trade, you don't see
Mm,
advantage of the other all the time,
mm,
especially with
mm,
British foreign trade. With British foreign
mm.
trade, there is no such thing as advantage of the other. The only time there's an advantage of the other for the British is during sex. That's the only. That's the only. That's
I think you're
that's
exaggerating. I don't think that's true. I think the rule probably holds. I mean, I can't speak from experience, but that's my having read some British authors. I haven't.
okay. All right. And so domestic commerce. So William McKinley makes a case for domestic commerce. He's not finished yet. Go to the next slide, and this is the last slide. The internal commerce of the United States is greater than the entire foreign commerce of Great Britain, France, Germany, Russia, Holland, Belgium, and Austria Hungary. Why a single railroad system in this country, that of the Pennsylvania Railroad Company, carries more tonnage and traffic in a single year than all the merchant ships of Great Britain. Free traders, why don't you ever talk about that? You don't want to talk
That's
about that.
awesome. That's
The
so
whole
awesome.
of Europe has not built as many miles of railroad as this country has during the recent years. And in 1880, the whole known world did not lay as many miles of track as were laid across the country. Great Britain's foreign commerce equals about one sixth of our domestic commerce. Can we do better under any other fiscal policy? We say not. Wise statesmanship commands us, therefore, to let well enough alone.
So now go on. I'm sorry. You take it up.
Okay, free traders never brag about how big domestic commerce grew in the United States of America. If you're looking for a measurement of economic growth, which Henry Carey always spoke about, and what Henry Hoyt, a general in the Civil War and ex governor of Pennsylvania, part of the American Protective Tariff League, a scholar of Henry Carey, said, if you want to measure an economy, do not do it by its foreign exports, do it by its domestic exchanges. That's what he said. And oh, by the way, you can type Henry Hoyt in Wikipedia. He's not a protectionist.
Hmm.
The only book that he wrote as a governor of Pennsylvania, and you're not interested in the only book that he wrote, that doesn't make any sense, right? So this the domestic commerce of the United States of America was bigger than leading nations in Europe, including Russia. And they still want to talk about free trade. Free trade can do this for you. Free trade is snake oil, whatever it's called, right? It has nothing, it's never going to increase domestic commerce, right? And all these protectionists ever wanted to talk about was how much our domestic commerce has grown. And what grew along with domestic commerce? Infrastructure. You're not going to have domestic commerce without infrastructure. Why is the Belt and Road Initiative so important? It's building infrastructure. It's allowing for the population to consume national products, national resources, right? It's allowing for domestic commerce to take foot. That's a far-sighted economic policy, right? So I wrap it up like that concerning William McKinley. As I said, William McKinley is my favorite post Civil War era politician and congressman for 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 the post Civil War era.
Mm.
And I want to again give thanks to my man George B. Curtis.
Well, thank you, Neil Martin. Thank you for your tremendous contributions over the past year. I think that past 12 months, and this is exemplary one.
We can take more
Um,
questions.
yeah, I will definitely. People who are watching, please lay out any questions. I want to raise a couple of thoughts that I have. One is, I mean, I just keep on getting struck by the incredible cohesion with China, as you just referred to. You know, he says in 1880, the whole known world did not lay as many miles of track as were laid across this country. China has more high-speed rail in China than the rest of the world combined. You know, I mean, that's incredible. Um, and I would be interested in this question of rail tonnage. I wonder what's the rail tonnage domestically in China and compare that to what's the tonnage of traffic of trade and so forth.
In the 1890s,
Hmm.
the New York Tribune reported that the tonnage of freight in the United States of America at that time period was bigger than the whole world freight by ocean.
Wow,
That's
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 that
how box office domestic commerce
that
was.
is box office. That's absolutely box office. You got to get some of these figures. Some of these nuggets that you gave tonight are going to be really useful to demonstrate. This one, the previous one, all everything demonstrating the nature of the real greatness of American domestic commerce. It's fascinating. But you know, I also think, as you're talking about this, you raised the idea of the culture, and you know, think about how sick American culture is right now. And it is so obvious, and LaRouche used to talk about this quite a bit, but it's so obvious that the connections between people and the conception of, a shared mission, a mutual cooperation towards a goal that's good for the coming generations. I mean, the fact that we don't have that, I'm seeing it again through the lens of domestic commerce. Like the fact that we don't have that kind of comradeship, between our fellow citizens or among our fellow citizens. It has so much to do with this destruction of the economy. I mean, like, people who live on the East Coast or the West Coast have had this experience of flying over the rest of the country or driving through it and just thinking, like, there's nothing here. There's just no future here at all. This is where the people are killing themselves with opioids. This is where, and other things more terrible. I mean, that's happening in the coast too. It's happening in the cities. All types of problems are really egregious. But the fact that there's like there seems to be such disconnection, such a situation where people are hiding in their particular economic enclave to the best that they can, while whole swaths of the country are just being sacrificed in this neoliberal service economy, destruction. Um, it seems like if we could revive domestic commerce, it would have an incredible effect on improving that sort of social rot that we have right now in the United States. So
Yeah,
that
but
occurred
the
to me.
thing with domestic commerce, it goes nowhere without LaRouche's four economic laws.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
concept, it can't take root unless we do something with LaRouche's four economic laws, and then also Helga's 10 points.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the whole inside of the four laws is, well, I don't mean to say the whole inside, but if you just deal with the situation, I mean, the effect of the shift over into over decades into total domination of the U.S. economy by the Anglo-Dutch liberal system, by the financial oligarchs, is such that you have this gigantic, humongous bubble, and people are still afraid to talk about it or do anything about it. I mean, like, I was graduating from college when the financial system crashed last time, and hello, like anyone with a pulse was aware of Glass-Steagall and how that would fundamentally systemically change the economy, the financial system. You have to write off the debts. You can't allow the worthless casino debts to continue. And if you don't change that, then forget about getting state directed credit. Forget about having a national banking system that's going to be able to provide the credit for NWAPA or any other kind of project that you want. So I mean, and if you're not going to do that, then forget about having any manufacturing. It's not going to happen. There's not some incremental process. It's got to be the crash program. It's got to be the focus on fundamental science, as seen in LaRouche's emphasis on high energy density jobs and nuclear fusion and the space program as being the crucial levers that we can use. Anyway, so I agree with you completely, but there's a sense that, like, if we can get, I'm just imagining if we could get some of these projects going, if we could get this transformation happening, the full thing, I don't think it's possible to do it piecemeal. Um, it's going to improve the way that people relate to each other so much.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. I don't have any other,
I
real
wanted I
questions
wanted to make
coming in
another. I
here.
wanted I wanted to further my comment on Simon Patton.
Well, why don't you do that and then
The
take the opportunity to round it out?
the one good thing that he did is that he opposed World War I. He didn't see Germany as the enemy.
Hmm.
That's one good thing that he did.
I don't
He
know who this guy is. Who
yeah,
is he?
he was a so protectionist,
American.
American, but
Oh
there's
yeah.
there's
Okay.
there's
The
better
Wharton School.
economists than him, right? He gets
Hmm.
he gets credit, like I think he's on like a list of the greatest 20 economists of the 19th century, and 20th century, and he's like he's in the top 20, and that's egregious. The top 20 should be all American system people. I hate to say it, but that should be them. Should no one comes close to the American system people. They have all these jabronis on it. It's like, it's
It's as bad as the Nobel Prize list.
oh yes, yes. The Nobel Prize list might be even worse because at least none of the I was going to say at least none of these 19th century and early 20th century political economists thought about nuclear war. But if they
Right.
if they had the opportunity to do that, they probably would think of that.
Probably would. All right. Well, why don't you finish us out? Close us out here, Neil. Thank you again for the presentation. Any final comments?
If you want to read William McKinley, I would start with his speeches and addresses of William McKinley from his election to Congress to the present time, and anything that the EIR has on William McKinley.
Show us the book. You got it? I didn't see it. If you did, show it. Speeches and addresses of William McKinley from his election to the Congress to the present time. Great. Very helpful. Thank you, Neil. Thank you very much. And then, yeah, you can go to larouchepub.com. You can subscribe to EIR. Okay.
One more.
And you can just put McKinley into the search bar and you'll find a bunch of stuff. Apostle of Protectionism. That's great.
And the author is Quentin R. Graybeck Jr.
Thank you for sharing a little bit of your library with us, Neil.
Yes.
All right. Good night. We'll do this again soon.